I missed you, Natalie. I run through the open grasslands, aiming at the direction Bonfice told us, and as the sun rises I have covered more than 5 kilometers. I have gone through knee-high grass which still had its morning dew, and my wet clothes are now soggy with water. The oversized boots make noise every step I make, and I decide to do something about it. I can't get far in such conditions. I find a river and take out all of my clothes and wash them, then hung them to dry in the sun. I remain with only my undergarments, and I plunge into the cold river water to take a bath. The water does wonders, cooling down all my body and mind. I had been haunted by the act of leaving behind an enrobed territory, but now the guilt melts away, and in its place it's replaced by an assurance in my mind that nothing bad can happen to her with Bonfice near her. I relax in the water for a very long time as my clothes dry, and I take that time to reflect on my past and my plans for the future. I have been through a lot, with very painful memories, and now it's time to relax and face a smooth life. But life has other plans for me. All of a sudden a group of warriors appear from nowhere and surround me. These are different from those who had pursued me in the morning. They are clean and dressed in crispy military fatigues, and on their feet are pairs of sparkling black waterproof boots. I jump out of the water, and that action alone triggers them to hold their swords steadily. "Don't move," shouts one warrior, the biggest among them. Looking at their menacing faces, I decide to obey. The leader approaches me slowly. Then he sees my clothes hanging on the trees, and he takes them, then throws them at me. "Put on your clothes," he says casually as if requesting, but I'm wise enough to know that it's an order. I obey quickly, mostly to keep their eyes off me and my hands off my breasts where I have been holding them. In 2 minutes I'm fully dressed. The boots are not dry enough, but I put them on anyway. I'm not walking barefoot again. The dagger is firmly strapped at its place, and the warriors don't say a thing. I stand at attention like a soldier waiting for instructions, and the leader takes the cue. "Now, soldier, tell us who you are and what you are doing at the Woodland Pack," he says. I'm glad that they are not from the side of the rogues. "I'm Natalie, the Luna of the Evergreen Pack. I am on the way to join Alpha James, who is at the Woodland Pack, and I would be glad if you took me to him," I say confidently. They all look at each other, then they burst into loud laughter. They keep looking at me, and every glimpse of me evokes even louder laughter. Some of them even roll on the grass, laughing, and I wonder what I have said is funny. "Have I said something funny?" I ask them. They get a bit serious, and the laughter dies away. "Forgive us, but what you say is unbelievable. You don't look like the Luna of anywhere, and by your looks maybe you should stop lying and take us seriously," the leader says. "Well, I have told you the truth. Take me to your Alpha Zach. He knows me, and I'm certain he'll be more cordial," I say, trying very hard to maintain my composure. "So you think throwing a few words around will convince us, rogue?" the leader says, a sneer written all over his face. Then he looks at his guards and nods to indicate something. 2 of them advance towards me and put a pair of handcuffs on my hands. Then they do a body search and find my dagger. An embarrassing moment takes place as they remove it, and I close my eyes in shame. "We are taking you to prison until you tell us who you really are. We have heard your narrative over and over again until we are now used to it. Every rogue claims to be a Luna and wants to see Alpha Zach. Odd, isn't it?" the leader, who I'm growing to hate, says. "But I have told you the truth," I plead as we start the journey. "Your boots suggest otherwise. Look, they are even oversized. Besides, warriors from the Evergreen Pack arrived on a bus 2 days ago, and I don't remember seeing you," he says. It's at that moment that I realize that everything is working against me. "Please, take me to Alpha Zach. Ask him whether what I'm saying is the truth, and if it isn't, take me to whatever prison you have," I plead, but the disdain in his face suggests that he won't be doing that. I happen to listen to a conversation behind me between other guards. "Look at her scar. These rogues fight against each other so much. They have very little respect for life, including their own. I look behind and the conversation stops. Are you alone or working in a group? The leader asks me. I am all alone. No groups, I reply. We are moving away through the dense forests and soon we emerge in a clearing with only 2 houses. This is our outpost. Our work is to maintain order along our boundaries. As you can see, we are several of us because we expect rogues like you to sneak out of the rogue territory every other minute. We have netted several and we always hand them over to their leader Matthew, who punishes them severely for attempting to escape. Sometimes he kills them. He's really dangerous, he says. I scream loudly at the mention of Matthew. Please don't take me back to the rogues. I have just escaped from them and to go back there is a death sentence on me. Please, whatever you do, don't take me back, I plead. The reality of being handed over is dawning on me, and the thought of what may happen in that event makes me tremble. Many warriors walk to different chores and the leader takes me to the small hut, opens it and pushes me inside without listening to my pleas. The hut has 2 rooms and I'm taken into one room and locked inside. The other room is equipped with sophisticated radio equipment, like some that I had seen in the training grounds at Evergreen Pack. Once I have sat on the ground, the leader can be heard fine-tuning the radio apparatus, searching for some signal, and he finds it. It starts with some sort of whistling sound, then some static before gaining clarity. Border Patrol reporting. Border Patrol, do you copy? He says. A long silence prevails and I can hear him clicking his tongue. Border Patrol, come in, he says. Static follows again, but not for long. Yes, Border Patrol comin' over. A man at the other end speaks and he's so clear. At that juncture I decide to make an attempt at saving myself. Border Patrol, what do you have? The voice asks. I wait until I'm certain it's the turn of the leader to respond and shout. Luna Natalie of the Evergreen Pack, being held prisoner. I make it sufficiently audible. You shut up. No one told you to speak. The leader interjects and I am happy at that because I'm sure the radio has captured that too. The voice from the other hand speaks again. Have I heard that right? Do you have Luna Natalie with you? It says. Well, we have a woman who claims as much, but she doesn't look the part, the leader says. I'm sending someone right away. This is for me to decide. Keep her ready. Over and out. The other side goes off. You will surely pay for this. I don't like it when my prisoners take it up with my bosses. I'm certain you aren't who you claim to be, and if you are returned back here you will pay dearly, he says behind the closed door before moving out and banging the outer door. I'm tempted to tell him that it will never happen. 30 minutes later the hut is opened and I'm taken out. A horse stands outside with a man on top and he helps me to mount it. All the guards in the camp are outside, standing helplessly as I am taken away. The horseman does not utter a single word to me and we take off at a high speed. We go through deep woods for about 20 minutes, then emerge in an open grassland. From a distance I can hear loud shouts and screaming. Looking closely I can see a huge gathering and I wonder what they're doing. The horse stops and the horseman allows me to take a look. What you see out there is the battleground. Those are warriors squaring it out against each other. The Woodland Pack and their ally the Evergreen Pack are winning. We can now continue with our journey, he says. 10 more minutes of speedy galloping takes us to a big magnificent house and he stops the horse, then disembarks and helps me down. It's the parking lot of the pack house and waiting for me is Alpha Zach and Alpha James. I quickly notice that James' shoulder is heavily bandaged. Dumbfounded, I am unable to gather the words. Alpha Zach approaches me in greetings. Good afternoon, Natalie, and sorry for the conduct of my warriors. I'll make sure they pay for this, he says. It's okay, Alpha Zach. Please don't punish them. It's part of their job, I say as I go past him to where Alpha James is. I feel like I can fly and grasp him, and the urge to squeeze him increases every passing second. My goodness, I had missed him so much. I rush into his outstretched hands and I feel peace engulfing all my body. He places his hands on my hair and pats it.
I missed you, Natalie.
He says. I'm speechless, because tears are trickling down freely.
I love you, Natalie.
I love you too, I say between sobs. I notice that Alpha Zach has walked away and James holds me for what looks like eternity. Key among them, the surrender of one Natalie Stevens, Bonfice. I know that my time with Alpha George is coming to an end, a bitter end. All the trust his pointman Matthew had in me, if any, is gone, and in its place a hatred that is so thinly veiled has set in. We dispatch our men to go to war alone because we have to wait for Alpha George, who has communicated through the radio that he's coming, and he has indicated that he wants to see me. The radio call was made in my absence by Matthew, contrary to our procedures, and that alone sends an alarm. Matthew went silent on me immediately after we came back from the river. A mistake was made and when she shouted at Natalie, urging her to run away by calling her by her real name. Matthew for some reason thought that I knew who this Natalie was and he demanded that I tell him, but I insisted that I didn't know her. I don't believe anything you are saying, Bonfice, and seeing that we are partners, it's really a sad development, he said. Why do you think I know this girl? I have already disclosed to you all that they told me, I said. I had dug my own grave, so why not make it deep enough? They say that once you say a lie, you create a situation whereby you must keep on lying. Deception begets deception. Bonfice, you have a lot of issues that need to be sorted out. First, you had the chance to kill Alpha James, but you let it pass. Now he is alive because of you, and he is busy plotting our defeat. If we don't win this war, it will be because you failed to act when the opportunity came. Alpha George told me to let that pass, but I find it difficult to do so, he said, walking away from me. I'm certain we will lose the battle, but it won't be my doing. These poorly organized rogues started a war without doing some little research. The juggernaut that is the Evergreen Pack wasn't put on their minds when they were starting the war, and that mistake will definitely cost them a lot. As for me, I have long accepted that I am a mercenary fighting for the money, and whichever side wins I'll be fine. Don't blame me for your incompetence. I don't strike unarmed and injured warriors. I'm not a coward. If you lose the war, it will be because of your poor planning and your haste. You should have waited for me to do some proper training on your troops, but you couldn't because you were in a hurry. See what your haste has done to you. All those hundreds of your troops you have lost. Was it necessary? I ask. This hurt him immensely because he didn't answer. When he talked some minutes later, the topic had changed. These girls. Something tells me that you know them. I also highly suspect that they didn't execute 4 warriors on their own, and to me you are the main culprit. Until you can prove me wrong, he said. I felt some anger building up in me. Why should he accuse me when I am sure he has zero evidence? The burden of proof, Matthew, if you know what that is on you. Until you have the evidence to associate me with what you are saying, keep your speculations to yourself. But if you ask me, your camp is so porous, I wonder why the enemy hasn't struck you yet. But then he too has his own inadequacies, I replied. He was way ahead of me and he increased his pace. I didn't bother to catch up, and when I reached the camp he had already made that radio call. I waited for Alpha George, knowing only too well that he had been fed on bad information about me, and when he came I was proven right. First, he had come accompanied by tight security, as if he thought I would attack him. He called the 2 of us and we went into the hut where I frightened and was being held. I knew he was going to conduct his own interrogations and prayed for favorable outcomes. Becky. Good morning, he said. He didn't wait for her answer. I know that is not your real name, but we will use it for the purposes of this questioning. Now, tell me, was it Natalie Stevens that was held alongside you here? That question caught me off guard. If instead it was Natalie, then I would be in hot soup because Alpha George knew how I was related to her. Then he would join the dots. I looked at her pleadingly, trying to communicate something to her. She was my mate, but we had no time to establish a strong mate bond, let alone mind linking. She took my message. No, she wasn't, she whispered, shaking her head. What was her name? George asked. It is always easy to forget false names because they get erased from memory easily. I have forgotten my own pseudonames severally, and I prayed that and remembers Natalie's pseudo. And she didn't disappoint. Catherine Sims, she said. I heaved a silent sigh. Who killed my guards? George continued with his questions, and started crying, and I pitied her. I needed to hatch another plan to take her away from this pathetic hut. Catherine did. She had a dagger that she used to stab them, she said amid sobs. No outside assistance? None. Are you sure? Yes. Why would I lie? I liked her already. She knew she was in trouble and some truth would mitigate her situation, but she chose to lie on and on. I hear you addressed your partner in crime as Natalie. Can you explain? George asked. Yes. I know Catherine for more than 15 years and we had this nickname for her. We call her Natalie. It's a name she got when she was abroad for military studies, she said, and was such a schemer. Abroad? And when she came back, what role did she play in the pack? George was now interested in the story. She was part of the training. Then she became part of the pack's medical team. Just like me, we were on a mission to get to the battleground to treat the wounded when we were captured, she said. I would have believed those lies myself if I was the interrogator. She was so good at it. I could see that George was satisfied with the answers. Finally, Becky, do you know this man? He asked, pointing at me. I felt a sudden rush of adrenaline and my heart began thumping vigorously. I prayed that she didn't expose me. She looked at me for a while, a very silent moment when everyone waited for the answer. My wolf was also becoming restless in my mind and I wondered what he was up to. She shook her head. No, I saw him first yesterday when we were brought here, she said. Alpha George rose up and walked out and we followed suit. Matthew was the last to leave and he locked the hut. There is a serious security lapse here. Your warriors are not doing their work properly here in the camp and I wonder how they are doing in the battleground. This laxity has to stop and you need to bring up your game, Matthew, for the time we will be working together. Once we are gone you can go back to your laxity. Let Bonfice train your warriors on how to keep the camp secure, George said when we got to the ramshackle that acted as Matthew's office. Now, I want both of you to go out into the battleground. Today I want only one thing done and done to precision. I want at least 20 warriors, mostly members of the Evergreen Pack. Don't bother capturing the Woodland Pack's warriors. They won't give us what we want. By today evening, do what I say and I may overlook your inadequacies. As for the girl in the hut, she is going to be joined by her compatriots, so I don't see the need for releasing her. Her arrest was uncalled for, an overreaction by your men that led to disaster. Blame your men, not her and not the girl who escaped. Now, get up and go to the battleground. 20 prisoners of war are waiting there for you to bring them here. I'll come personally to count them later in the evening. Go, he said. That was quite a tall order and the battleground today is proving to be difficult. I don't concentrate much on what's going on because my brain is occupied with thoughts on how to remove myself from the hole I'm already in. I want to abandon the war, but then I can't leave behind my mate Anne. I have spent several hours thinking about her and our future together, our family and much more. I like her already, her beauty, and most importantly her intelligence. I can also tell that she is so much attracted to me because of the way she looks at me. The battle will have winners and losers, but I'll be the luckiest because I will emerge with a mate. The message to our fighters to take hostages is passed quickly and we embark on it most of the afternoon. The strategy is simple. We organize around 20 fighters to attack only 4 enemy warriors. Once the 4 discover that they have been outnumbered, they surrender and give up. We target mostly the young fighters, the students. Something else works to our advantage. The Evergreen Pack has started smelling victory and they are growing reckless with no major leaders in the front line. We take away our prisoners without much ado. By the end of the day we have more than 20 prisoners. We have surpassed our targets by far. We take them back to our camp and lock them up. There are only 3 girls and we lock them together within. Alpha George has not come to check on them as he had promised and we raise him on the radio. Congratulations. I knew you would do it. I will now send an emissary to Alpha Zach and Alpha James to release their prisoners. There are going to be some conditions to be met. Key among them is the surrender to me of one Natalie Stevens, to answer to war crimes she has committed against my warriors. Oh my goodness. I'm a healer, Natalie.
I was worried about you. My intelligence report said that you left 2 days ago and I have been waiting for you. When you didn't turn up I became worried and I sent signals around looking for you. You can imagine my happiness when the radio call came with the information that you had been found.
James tells me when we get to his quarters. The pack house is very big, with several wings, and one wing is assigned to James alone. It has 2 bedrooms, a sitting room, a washroom and a kitchen. It is a home away from home. We are in the kitchen together cooking coffee as we talk. Earlier, I had gone to the bathroom and scrubbed myself from all the dirt that I had accumulated, then threw into a bucket all my dirty clothes and put on James' shorts and t-shirt. They were all oversized, but that's all I could do with. Using soap and detergents, I had washed the clothes and hung them to dry. They are the only ones I have since everything else was strewn all over the grasslands by the rogues. I narrated my ordeal to James and he was impressed by my courage. But he should have known that I was always over the edge with fear. I had to come. I was dying back at home, not knowing where you were or what you were going through. Then I learned that you were injured and I couldn't even sleep. I missed you, James, and I was dying to see you. Then some pain in my body told me that you needed me too. I couldn't resist. I say. The coffee is ready and we take it while seated at the kitchen table. It tastes great and the aroma is excellent. Everything about the Woodland Pack is admirable. The pack house is a show of opulence, with marble and granite everywhere you look. Even though they lag behind in road networks and phone connectivity, they are very rich in natural resources. I have heard that all the cobalt needed to make some components of smartphones and computers is mined in their territory, and they say there are gold deposits in their dense forests. Can I take a look at your wound, James? I ask suddenly, waking him from some reverie.
Yes, certainly. I am feeling better now after the wound was sewn by our medical team.
He removes his vest and I walk over. I remove the bandage and see the ugliest and biggest wound I have ever seen. It covers his collarbone all the way to the arm, touching his biceps. Even my scar pales in comparison. Then I remember that it's my own brother Bonfice who inflicted the wound and I get spikes in my spine.
That man almost killed me. Actually, I am only alive because he refused to do it, and this troubles my mind. I don't like living in debt.
He says. I ignore that line of conversation and place my hand over the wound and I notice that he has closed his eyes. Then he starts shaking, but my hand instinctively remains held over his wound. He keeps on shaking for about 5 minutes, then he stops and I notice that he has fallen asleep. My hand is still on his shoulder and I don't feel like removing it. I feel that I should keep it there for a while, an urge to keep holding. Then I feel a sudden hike in my temperature and I start sweating. A sharp pain like the one that struck me when he was injured goes through my shoulder. Then it goes down my hand to my palm and exits into his body. I feel a sudden relief, as if I have released something. But his reaction wakes him up and he starts shaking again. I feel him getting hot at the point where my hand holds his shoulder for a while. Then my hand lightens and I can lift it off. It's only then that I notice that his wound has healed and the sutures are gone. I'm shocked at this realization. What happened? I ask myself. 1 minute the wound was fresh with sutures all over. The other minute it's only a scar. I'm still dazed when James slowly stands up, then jumps to his feet.
My goodness, Natalie, why didn't you tell me that you are a healer?
He asks. I'm still wondering what has happened, trying to understand what I have experienced, and I'm speechless. James swings his hand to the right and to the left and he doesn't believe it. Neither do I.
Natalie, why did you hide this from me? Why didn't you tell me that you can heal? This hand was so injured I didn't think it would ever heal. Hell, I can join the battle already?
He says excitedly, his hand doing circles. I didn't know about it myself. I would have used the healing prowess on myself, James, if I knew. I reply. I am more confused than him.
The pack's medical team must know this. Do you know how much this means to me, Natalie? Do you know what this means to our warriors?
He asks. I don't answer because he's busy looking at his shoulder, but he can't see it properly.
There's a mirror at the sitting room. Let's go there. I need to see this properly.
He takes my arm and we leave the kitchen and walk hand in hand to the sitting room. He dumps the bandage in a dustbin in the hallway. We reach where the mirror is, engraved on the wall with a gold-coated frame. He stands in front of it and admires what he sees. There is no wound and there is no pain. I'm standing right behind him and our reflections in the mirror meet and we smile at each other. Then he turns around and faces me. He holds both my hands and pulls me to him and our bodies meet. He's too tall and I have to look up in order to see him properly. My hands go around his stomach but they can't meet because he has huge toned muscles. His eyes are fixed on mine and I can see he wants to kiss me any minute. I can't wait. This is a moment I have been waiting for so long and now I wish for it to happen immediately. His head starts coming down, slowly coming to meet mine for a kiss, and I try standing on my toes to meet him. I see his puckered succulent lips and I feel my whole body longing, yearning for him. But just before our lips touch, a loud knock on the door interrupts us. The build-up gets shattered and he lets go of me. The knock is repeated and he goes to check. I hear muted conversation between him and Alpha Zach's servant, then he closes the door and comes back to me.
Alpha Zach expects us at the dinner table. I had forgotten about the dinner. Your clothes must be dry now. Let's get dressed and go. We shouldn't keep them waiting.
He says, cursing the servant silently. I go for my clothes in the spare bedroom and dress up quickly, then make my hair and apply some lotion on my body and some deodorant. I don't have shoes since I arrived here wearing torn boots, and I approach James in his bedroom over the issue. I find him dressed in nothing else but his boxers, and the urge to grab him is irresistible. Holding him in the shoulders, I can feel his manhood pricking me as he holds my butt, pulling me towards him. The urge to mark each other is written on each of our faces, and I draw deep breaths. I want it right now.
Natalie, no, not now. I want this to be so special when it happens. I want it to be memorable. Let's stop right now before we get tempted and do it before it's time.
He says, and I feel an awkward feeling. The feeling one feels when she's about to sneeze, and they are all set to do it. Then the feeling disappears. These were the exact words he spoke before leaving for the battleground.
Don't worry, Natalie. Tomorrow, I promise you, I'll take you out for a run. Then I'll make you mine. Now, let's go. Alpha Zach is waiting for us.
He says as he disentangles himself from my grip. Dinner is served in the expansive dining room and we engage in conversations about general issues. I narrate to them about my daring escape and how I killed 4 warriors, and everyone's mouth is left agape.
Tell you what, guys?
James says. Everyone is silent, eager to hear what he has to say.
Natalie, the Luna of the Evergreen Pack, is a healer. No one has noticed that my injuries are gone, just by placing her hand on the wound. Can you imagine that?
He says to everyone's shock. Are you sure, James? Alpha Zach asks. looking up from his food.
Certainly, I can join the battleground even tomorrow. I feel more rejuvenated and energized, more energized than the day I joined the war.
He says. Then that is wonderful, Luna Natalie. You can be of help to us. You can join the medical team here. We need your services, Alpha Zach says. We resume eating, but then some moments later a man who is introduced as the beta of the pack walks in and whispers something into the ears of Alpha Zach. The alpha seems worked up by the information as he receives a sealed letter. The beta leaves immediately. Alpha Zach opens the letter and reads it in silence, then hands it over to James, who reads it too and shakes his head every passing second. Alpha Zach has lost all his appetite and he pushes his plates away.
This is unbelievable. George has lost his mind and it's now time to deal with him,
James says after he's through with reading. He passes the letter to me and I peruse it slowly, reading a list of demands that George wants to be met in order to release some prisoners he is holding. Among the prisoners, in my mental note, is one Anne, my friend. I don't know much about his demands, but I'm jolted into attention when I see my name. He wants me arrested and sent to him to answer for the offense of multiple murders of our warriors. The letter says, the Situation Room, Natalie. In the early hours of the morning we walk back to the pack house and straight to our quarters. I am very sleepy and tired from the activities of the night. We didn't sleep much last night because we couldn't have enough of each other. We ended up devouring each other all night, but now that's in the past. I feel great, having marked James as mine and mine only. Except for the sleep in my system, I feel sufficiently energized and ready to join the troops. But not today. Right now I want nothing else but to sleep the whole day. James isn't as lucky as I am. As a major leader in the ongoing war, he is needed in the usual morning meetings to plan the day's activities at the battleground. I look at him as he strips to his undergarments and puts on his military gear. He looks commanding, given his huge physique, his broad shoulders, his tallness and big muscles. I am glad that all these belong to me and consider myself very lucky. He's the man who took me when I was at my lowest point, when I was a nobody, having gone from an omega to a rogue, and now he has taken me from rogue to Luna. My wolf was all but gone, in recess, but because of him my wolf is back and I am my old self again. Also, he has restored confidence in me and I now feel secure, unlike before when I couldn't make simple decisions because I feared rejection. Now that is gone and I don't fear him leaving me or rejecting me. He is a perfect gentleman. All these are nothing compared to what I have discovered just yesterday. That I could heal wounded people. I had powers in myself that nobody knew about, even myself, until I placed my hand instinctively on Jane's shoulder and he had received instant healing. When I think about it, I remember several dreams I had when I was a child. I could see myself seated under a tree and people would come to me and I would touch their heads and they would walk away happy. When I told my mother about my dreams, she dismissed them as just dreams, but they kept on recurring. I ignored them, but now I can see they held some meaning. I have James to thank for this discovery and I am going to remain faithful to him for the rest of my life.
What are you thinking about, darling?
He asks me, and I almost jump from the bed, startled out of my reverie. He is now all dressed up, looking every bit as a soldier straight out of the battleground. Nothing, dear. I'm just feeling sleepy and immediately you walk out I'm going to submit myself to sleep. I reply, yawning.
Well, in that case I will leave you to sleep. Sorry for keeping you up all night yesterday,
he says as he walks to the bed. He goes down on one knee and brings down his head as if to kiss me but remains about a few inches from me.
Thanks, Natalie, for everything. How I wish this war comes to an end quickly so that we can go back home,
he asks. I pull down his head and it meets mine and we kiss passionately. With one hand I reach for his pants and I can feel a bulge forming. He quickly releases himself from my grip and moves away a few steps.
I have to go. I'll see you later. If I stay here a few more minutes, I may discard the duties ahead of me,
he says, and I watch him walk to the door. He turns to me and salutes before leaving. The door clicks shut and I pull the covers over my head and pray that I succumb to sleep immediately. But that doesn't happen. The door opens again, and as I wonder who it could be, James walks back in.
As it turns out, you are needed in the meeting as much as I am. There are some aspects of the war that need your input, and the War Council has sent me to get you. The meeting is going to start in 20 minutes. I would be preparing myself if I were you,
he says. I jump out of bed without question, and I admire the new me. If it were my mother, we would have quarreled for some minutes as she convinces me about the importance of putting other matters ahead of my sleepy head. But with James, the first obey without question. I go straight to the bathroom and take a quick shower, and when I come back I find him poring over some maps. I walk into the walk-in closet to dress, and in 10 minutes I am through. As usual, I apply my lotions and deodorants.
Smells nice,
he says. I don't need to tell him that he smells nice too. A very strong natural fragrance that I can detect from very far away. Thanks, James, the first appreciate. Now I am ready, I say. He gets up from the bedside desk and we walk out hand in hand. The huge round table is in a big hall that I learn later is for purposes of entertainment. But in war times no one has time for entertainment. We take seats around the table, and James sits next to me. Alpha Zach starts the meeting.
Valiant warriors, as usual we are seated on this round table as equals. No one is bigger than the other here, and every opinion counts. I want us to analyze the war situation,
he says. There's shuffling as members withdraw from their bags the files they've brought to the meeting. I sit patiently and wait. I will yield the floor to my peer, Alpha James of the Evergreen Pack, our ally and a man who has never abandoned us in our time of need. He will appraise members on the war so far and the way forward. Zach adds. James opens his file and looks through it, then closes it and starts speaking. He talks about the challenges he has faced on the front line and how the rogues are emboldened after receiving help from the Two Hills Pack. He talks about his own injuries and how he escaped death by a whisker.
I had hated that man Bonfice, but now I think I'll think of him from a different perspective,
he says. My heart skips a beat when my brother is mentioned. He leads the enemy troops and that makes him my adversary. If you two meet again in the war front, kill him. Alpha Zach cuts in. I feel a knot in my heart. What really happened to my fate? Why am I listening to people discussing on how to kill my brother?
The other issue is about the hostages, or as Alpha George calls them, prisoners of war. What do you think we should do?
James asks. Alpha Zach looks at his file, that which I presume has the letter from George, and shakes his head. Then he looks around and speaks. We cannot abandon our warriors, taken hostage by that lunatic, but we can also not give in to his demands. Some are utterly outrageous. For example, he wants us to withdraw our border patrol and negotiate for an end of the war with the rogues. Also, there's a company that he wants us to give exclusive rights to our forests, so that they can harvest our timber. We can also not allow that. He also wants some part of our pack to be ceded to the rogues. Everyone here knows that what the rogues call their land basically belongs to us. And now they want more. There's one more ridiculous demand, that we hand over Natalie Stevens to him. He pauses for a moment to let that sink. I am now very attentive, and all that sleep that was bothering me is now long gone. For those who don't know her, Natalie Stevens is here with us. She is the mate to Alpha James and the Luna of the Evergreen Pack. She is an invaluable asset to us now because we just discovered that she has healing powers. We will need her in our team to help us in healing our wounded. Now you can see that Alpha George is completely insane to ask us to hand over the mate to our biggest ally, not to mention what she means to us. None of his demands can be met, and I am asking for your opinion on how to free our people. He says. I feel that he has made a powerful presentation. The first to talk is the beta of the pack. He insists that the Woodland Pack and Evergreen Pack troops invade the rogues' hideout and free the hostages through fighting. But the Gamma of the pack has other ideas. A thick-set man with long unkempt hair and a bushy mustache. He speaks in a very deep voice, as if his lungs are laden with subwoofers. Let's start by eliminating the leaders of the rogues' army. We already know about Matthew Sanders. Let's kill him. Let's kill Bonfice Stevens. At that a gasp escapes my mouth, but no one notices. This man talks about killing my brother as if it's nothing. I notice that I am sweating. In a moment, all the memories I had with my brother flash through my eyes. How I wish I told everyone that Bonfice is my brother. I also know that if James finds out from other sources, then I'll be in trouble, judging by his reaction when he found out about George and I. Kill every leader. Then lastly, kill Alpha George, he says. The whole table falls silent. If we kill Alpha George, there will arise a diplomatic standoff. Remember, he's not participating in the war as the alpha of his pack. He's here discreetly. We already have a peace treaty with him, and if he dies in our hands, we invite trouble. Not only from his pack, but from other neighboring packs who might have signed the same treaty. Alpha Zach says. Just make sure that he dies in the battleground. Or get him injured in a manner that will be difficult to heal. The Gamma continues. Everyone is silent now. I propose a death sentence on Matthew Sanders, Bonfice Stevens, George Alfred and other senior fighters. Any objections? The Gamma asks. He looks around to see whether there is anyone who is opposing his idea. From the alpha of his pack, to other senior members, to the beta, and everyone agrees with him. He moves his eyes to James, and James nods in agreement. Then he trains his big eyes on me. Bonfice is my brother. Hurt him not. Natalie. After the meeting ends around noon, I go back to our quarters wondering if I will be able to sleep. Every member of the council has passed a death sentence on my brother, and I am so sad about it. I also nodded in agreement when the Gamma with an hardline stance looked at me. Then I remember something James told me. He called it full disclosure.
Natalie, if you want peace in your life, always put all the cards on the table. The little things you choose to conceal are very dangerous, and they may ruin your reputation in future.
He had said to me the night after finding out about George and I. Now his words are proving to be right. I don't know how to break the news about Bonfice being my brother, but I must tell James because I can't wait for him to be killed while I'm doing nothing. I must do something. James is still held up in a meeting as I lay in bed. Immediately I go into deep sleep. I don't like sleeping during the day because that's when I dream the worst dreams. In one of these dreams I see James and Bonfice fighting again. The healing I gave him also imparted on him some more powers, and his sword strikes with an extra force. Bonfice's sword is sent flying by a savage strike that sends him rolling on the ground, and James kicks him around, mockingly.
You had your chance, ha ha ha, but you squandered it. Now I am going to kill you. What are your final words?
James taunts Bonfice, whose eyes are begging for mercy. I scream to James to spare Bonfice, but no voice comes out of my mouth. James strikes again, but Bonfice rolls away and the huge sword is stuck on the ground. Then Bonfice jumps up and the two engage in a wrestling match. I cry again to them to stop, but my voice is gone and all I can do is to cry. The two men who I care for are now engaged in a death match. James is so strong for Bonfice and he throws him to the floor several times. Then at one juncture James manages to draw his sword from the ground, and he raises it to strike Bonfice. At this juncture I scream loudly, a scream that wakes me up. James is standing at the bedside looking at me. I am sweating profusely.
What is the problem? You are having a bad dream in the middle of the day,
he says as he sits on the bed. The clock on the wall indicates that I have been sleeping for 2 hours, and that is enough sleep for now. Just a bad dream, James, I say.
Must have been so bad. You were speaking in your dreams, though inaudibly,
he says.
Tell you what, why don't we go out for a run?
He asks. Sounds like a good idea for me. My wolf has been dying for some running. Also, this will be a perfect opportunity to tell James about Bonfice. I'll risk everything for my brother and I am ready to pay the price. I will bear the consequences.
Great, then put on your running shoes because we are going out right now. It's been long since I went out for a run and I feel so energetic. Also, from tomorrow the war will consume a lot of my time and we may not have a lot of time for each other. More reason for us to utilize the little time we have to the fullest.
He says. I get up and put on my shoes. James changes from his military fatigues to a tracksuit and sports shoes and we walk out of our quarters. After walking for about 20 minutes we are out in the fields and we can't see anyone around us. I decide to break my silence. James, there is something I kept secret from you and I think I can't keep it any longer now. I say. He stops in his tracks, then walks the short distance between us and holds my hands.
Natalie, but I thought there were no more secrets. You said that you had nothing to hide. Now what is it?
He says. He is somehow angry but that won't deter me. James, you may not like me after what I'm going to tell you. You may hate me exceedingly. I say. The word softens his heart and he tightens his grip on my hand.
No, Natalie, I'll never hate you. Take that to the bank. If there's something bothering you, please tell me. Let it out of your heart. Share with me. I'm your man.
He says. Tears are already flowing out of my eyes and James wipes them away. I choose the moment to speak. James, it's about Bonfice Stevens, I say, then burst into loud sobs. James holds me closer but I can see his mind is elsewhere. It's racing. He stares into space but his eyes can't see. Suddenly he gets startled.
Oh my goodness, Natalie, I now get it. I now piece the dots. Why didn't I see it that way?
He asks, disengaging himself from me. He walks away from me, and I guess he knows now. Please, James, don't be mad at me. I thought it was the best thing to do, to protect myself. Please don't harm him. He's my younger brother. My words are like daggers thrown at him because he turns and faces me, then walks back to me and holds me tight. I cry at his chest.
Natalie, I owe Bonfice a debt. He told me that there was a reason for not striking me dead and that I should find it, but I have tried looking everywhere and I never found it. Until now, the reason why he didn't kill me is because he knew about us. He spared me because of you, Natalie.
He says as his squeeze on me tightens. Please don't kill him. Please convince your peers and leaders on the war front to remove his name from the list of death. Bonfice helped me escape and I am sure he's taking good care of my friend and because she is his mate. I say.
Natalie, that list you saw cannot be amended without good reason and if I try to tamper with it there may be repercussions. But there is something I will tell you. An oath I will swear to you. Your brother will not die in my hands and I will try to see to it that he doesn't die, without exposing you. As for the rest of the men in the list, those are the most unlucky people on earth. The Gamma is planning their capture as we speak.
He says as he holds my hands again and kisses me. Then we continue walking.
I can safely assume that there's nothing else you are withholding from me now, Natalie.
He finally says after we have walked for some distance in silence. We are now deep inside the deep woods. The air is so fresh and it smells of eucalyptus oil. Also, the hot sun does not reach the ground as the tall trees create a very big shadow, and the ground is very cool. Nothing else, James, except that I found out about who organized for me to be beaten back at our evergreen pack. I say, please forgive me. I had forgotten. I add before he says something. He just smiles and keeps on walking.
Any prizes for guessing?
He asks with a sly smile. Yes, a kiss, I reply.
It was Janet. No?
He asks. How did you find out?
My kiss first.
He says as he draws me to him and kisses me briefly on the lips.
I didn't become alpha for nothing. I am a consumer of intelligence. My officers tried to solve the puzzle and every clue led to her. Only that there wasn't any evidence to pin her. We will deal with her once the war is over. Interestingly, she was among our warriors, but we sent her home when we found out that she cheated to be recruited. Very dangerous girl, and even as we speak I wonder what she is up to.
James says. I forgave her. I say casually.
Wrong move. This girl is fire. You should have thrown her in jail when you found out about her role in your troubles. But since you didn't, expect some more from her. And this time, it'd be nasty.
He says, sending shivers up my spine.
And now, time for us to do our jogging. Let's do it without shifting. Or what do you think?
He asks and I nod my approval. We jog in silence for about 30 minutes. Deep into the forest, then take a loop that leads to the clearing we had gone for picnic. The sun is almost setting when we get there and we take out all our clothes and swim naked. Later that evening the Alpha calls back his council and we attend together with James. I feel so fresh and energized after the outing and the swimming. Unlike in the morning when I was so sleepy, this time I give the meeting all my attention. The Gamma of the pack is giving out his conclusions. I know that he had been assigned to look for ways of subduing the top command of the rogue army due to his tough stand. Alpha James, now that he has healed completely, will be tasked with capturing or killing Matthew Sanders. Alpha Zach, who has joined the war, will be given the honor of capturing or killing Alpha George. We would prefer the latter. And our Beta, he will be tasked in laying siege on the rogue camp and rescuing the captured warriors. This can be executed when the rogues are out fighting. Ensure that you torch the camp when you are through. As for me, I'll lead the assault on Bonfice Stevens. By the end of this war, I'll deliver his head to this council, he says to cheers from other council members. Except me.